They never told you where the real war was being fought. They wanted you to believe it was out there, on stages in boardrooms, in the spotlight where applause and recognition echo like thunder. But the truth has always lived elsewhere, in a place no one dares to acknowledge, the unseen arena. It is silent, without banners, without music, without witnesses. It is the chamber of observation, of memory, of patience sharpened into a blade. While they charged into battle, armored with noise and spectacle, you remained still, gathering what they could never touch, the patterns behind their chaos, the cracks beneath their strength. You were never meant to be noticed. They overlooked you, dismissed you, mistook your quiet for weakness. But quietness was your disguise, and disguise became your weapon. While they burned themselves in the fire of competition, you learned to breathe in the smoke and see through it. They celebrated their strength as though it were unshakable stone, but stone erodes, always. You felt the erosion before they did. You watched it like an astronomer tracking the collapse of a distant star, slow, inevitable, catastrophic. Strength is loud, visible, and intoxicating. It demands to be seen, demands to be worshipped. But weakness is different. Weakness is hidden, subtle, patient. It waits, and in the unseen arena, waiting is power. They trained their bodies, they polished their reputations, they stacked walls higher and higher, believing height meant safety. But every wall carries a fault line, and every mask slips when no one is watching. You became the one who watches, the one who records, the one who collects what they try to bury. This is the arena where betrayal is born, not by sudden violence, but by slow revelation. A forgotten look, a tremor in the voice, a boast that reveals desperation. These are the hidden currencies of power, the coins you hoard while others waste theirs on spectacle. In this shadowed theater, your silence is not absence. It is presence, heavier than any speech. And when they glance your way briefly, suspiciously, they sense it. They sense the weight of someone who knows. They thought strength would protect them, but strength makes them rigid. Rigid things break. You are fluid, formless, unbound. You slip through their defenses not with attack, but with understanding. They mistake you for nothing, and nothing is the most dangerous force of all. Out of nothing, storms form. Out of nothing, doubt grows. Out of nothing, empires collapse. In this unseen arena, you learn the oldest truth, the one whispered across centuries and carved into ruins. Those who build only strength build their own weakness. They just don't know it yet. And you, silent, patient, overlooked. You are the reminder they will never escape. For when the lights fade and the applause dies, only the arena remains, and in that darkness it is always you who endures. They stand before you, draped in confidence like kings in borrowed crowns. Their voices are loud, their movements calculated, their smiles sharpened into weapons of persuasion. To the untrained eye, this is strength. To the obedient crowd, this is power. But you see it for what it is, a mask carved from desperation. Every gesture too rehearsed, every word too polished. The armor they wear is not forged from certainty. It is stitched together from fear of collapse. And once you learn to look past the glare, you begin to notice the trembling beneath. You watch as they walk into rooms, expecting silence to break for them. Applause follows, heads bow, bodies lean forward. Yet behind their eyes, something flickers, the awareness that without the performance, they are nothing. Strip away the stage, and they shrink. Remove the mirror of admiration, and they vanish. Their strength is not their own. It is borrowed from the gaze of others. You see them cling to it, terrified of being forgotten. They built a kingdom out of reflections. But reflections shatter the moment you throw a stone. The mask of power is a prison. They polish it daily, terrified of a single crack, every laugh at the wrong time, every whisper they cannot control, every silence that lingers too long. It eats at them. They cannot sleep without wondering who is watching, who is doubting, who is plotting. What they show the world is iron, but what they hide is glass. They know this, though they would never confess it. That is why they surround themselves with noise, with followers, with distractions. Silence exposes them, and silence is your weapon. You do not envy them. Why would you? Their throne is fragile, their crown heavy, their fear endless. You understand the truth the stronger the performance, the deeper the weakness beneath it. The more they shout, the more they betray the silence within. And you wait. You let them build higher walls, brighter lights, louder voices, because you know what they cannot admit. Strength that depends on masks is already weakness in disguise. And when the mask slips, when the weight of pretending crushes them, it will not take a sword to bring them down. It will take only a whisper. You watched them when they thought no one was watching. Their voices filled the air with certainty. Their gestures carved patterns of dominance across every room they entered. They thought their strength was spectacle, that loudness equaled truth. But in silence, you collected what they never guarded. Every pause in their voice, every shift in their eyes, every fragile crack hidden beneath their performances. While they built kingdoms of noise, you built an archive of shadows. You did not need to move. Stillness became your weapon. They mistook your quiet for weakness, never realizing it was observation that sharpened your sight beyond their armor. You learned to read the twitch in a hand that betrayed insecurity, the forced laugh that blawed desperation, the sudden silence that revealed more than any confession. They were distracted by applause. You were counting the spaces between claps. They carried swords forged from recognition. You carried knowledge stolen from the emptiness between their words. In the cafeteria, you noticed who they sat beside and who they avoided. In the meeting room, you measured how often they repeated themselves when challenged. On the battlefield, you tracked how they breathed before striking. What they called power, you recorded as patterns, and patterns are cages. They thought their victories were spontaneous, radiant, undeniable. But you knew the truth. They were predictable scripts, repeated rituals, hollow echoes of the same fear disguised as triumph. They built their strength in daylight. You built yours in the shadows that followed them. And it is in the shadows where truth cannot be polished, where weakness crawls out from the masks they polish so carefully. You did not chase recognition. You let them blind themselves under its glow. Their confidence thickened into arrogance. Their arrogance hardened into blindness, and blindness made them yours. There were moments when you almost pitied them, watching them rehearse smiles, flex dominance, pretend to be unshakable. But pity is a luxury you abandoned long ago. What you saw was not power. What you saw was desperation camouflaged as strength. And every time they projected certainty, you noted the tremor in their foundation. You learned that strength is loud because it fears silence, while silence carries no fear at all. And so your silence became prophecy, because what you observed could not be unlearned. You began to see through them, past the masks, past the armor, into the trembling machinery beneath. And once you see the machinery, it no longer terrifies you. It becomes predictable, containable, breakable. They celebrated each new victory as if it made them untouchable. You stood quietly, already aware of the moment it would all collapse. You were not powerless. You were waiting. And while they danced in the light of their own illusion, you became the shadow that would one day swallow it whole. Every empire looks perfect from a distance. Their walls gleam, their banners stretch high, and their voices echo with certainty. But when you step closer, when you listen instead of stare, you hear it, the faint vibration of a single trembling thread. It hides beneath the noise of their victories, buried under layers of confidence, but it is always there. They believe their strength is seamless, unbreakable, infinite. Yet you know what they cannot admit: the stronger the web, the more fragile its flaw. You've seen it in their eyes, in the way they laugh too loudly or answer too quickly. A mask slips for only a moment, but a moment is all you need. One contradiction, one fracture in their story, and suddenly the truth hums beneath everything they say. It's not muscle or wealth or power that defines them. It's the silent terror of being exposed. They polish their image with discipline, but their discipline itself becomes the prison. They must maintain it endlessly, because if they stop, even for a second, the world sees the crack, and you, the watcher in the dark, hold that vision like a blade pressed to their throat. Strength, after all, is heavy. It bends the shoulders that carry it. They think the weight proves their dominance, but in time, it corrodes them. You notice the strain, the slight pause before their smile, the shadow in their gaze when no one else is looking. Every triumph demands another, louder, brighter, larger than the last. Their victories become chains, each link forged from fear of collapse. And collapse begins not with a crash, but with a tremor, a thread quivering, stretching, warning that the entire structure is built on silence and denial. That thread is doubt, and doubt is immortal. You do not need to break them. You need only to make them question. Did their allies stand with them out of loyalty or out of fear? Are their achievements truly theirs, or hollow constructions propped up by circumstance? Did they build an empire, or only the appearance of one? The questions breed in the silence of night, when their armor is off, when applause has faded, when shadows are louder than light. You know that once planted, these doubts cannot be erased. They take root in the marrow of their confidence and grow until every word, every gesture, every glance feels poisoned. So you wait. You do nothing. Because weakness is patient. It feeds itself, gnaws quietly at the edges until the entire web quakes with instability. And while they clutch tighter to their crowns, their status, their strength, you know the truth. Their fortress is not destroyed from the outside. It collapses from within, and all it takes is the smallest thread unraveling, carrying the weight of everything they tried to hide. You do not pull it. You only notice it, and that knowledge alone makes you more powerful than they will ever be. They thought strength was invincible, but you knew it was only flesh stretched thin over trembling bone. Strength shines, parades itself, boasts of victories, but it is loud, too loud, and loud things can be traced, measured, dismantled. You, however, worked in silence, not with swords, not with fire, but with seeds. Seeds so small they could be mistaken for nothing. A comment left unfinished, a look that lasted a fraction too long, a truth whispered at the edge of a lie. They dismissed these moments, but the mind never does. The mind hoards shadows, feeds them, returns to them in the dark. Strength builds walls. You slipped through cracks. Their fortress was never broken by a hammer. It was softened by rain. You learned that doubt is water. It seeps into stone, invisible at first, yet given time it reshapes mountains. You didn't need to overthrow their empire. You only needed to remind them that empires fall, that kings bleed, that what they called certainty was nothing more than noise echoing inside their skulls. The stronger they pretended to be, the sharper your silence became. You knew the danger of grand attacks. They would unite against fire, but against a whisper. They scatter, confused, wondering who among them still believes. You watched them choke on their own thoughts, replaying your words, searching for meanings that may not even exist. A single suggestion could haunt them longer than 1,000 threats. That was your weapon, not destruction, but infection. You did not fight their strength. You rewrote it from within, turning their victories into cages, their confidence into poison, their allies into mirrors reflecting their own fragility. The seed is never obvious when it is planted. It looks like nothing. It feels like nothing. But one night, they wake and cannot silence the echo of your shadow. Their dreams betray them. Their hands tremble before battle. Their voice falters before a crowd, and they wonder if you saw their weakness. Who else has seen it too? They built their strength on the stage, but you planted their weakness in the audience, where unseen eyes pierce deeper than any blade. And now, without ever lifting a weapon, you hold them hostage. They cannot stop remembering. They cannot silence what you revealed. They cannot continue without carrying the suspicion that everything they built rests on fragile ground. This is the collapse, not sudden, not violent, but inevitable. They spent their years forging armor. You slipped a splinter beneath the skin. They thought it was nothing, but it festers, it grows, until the body they worshipped, the power they worshipped, betrays them from the inside. You are not the destroyer. You are the gardener of ruin. And every seed you planted in silence is now blossoming into storms they cannot contain. They thought strength would save them. They believed that if they built enough walls, sharpened enough blades, gathered enough followers, nothing could touch them. But strength is a hunger that never ends. It feeds on itself until it becomes poison. The very muscle they flexed so proudly begins to tear under its own weight, and you, silent, patient, watch the unraveling from the shadows they forgot existed. Their confidence becomes a weapon turned inward. What once looked like discipline transforms into chains. Every routine becomes obsession. Every plan becomes paranoia. They no longer train for victory. They train to escape the possibility of weakness, a phantom that grows heavier the more they deny it. Their victories no longer taste like triumph. They taste like dust, like the desperate mouthfuls of someone trying to outrun inevitability. Allies who once stood at their side now sharpen knives behind their backs. Strength breeds envy. Power breeds rebellion. The very empire they constructed to stand eternal begins to rot from within, not because of your hand, but because of their own. You see it in their eyes, the flicker of doubt they try to drown with louder speeches, stronger postures, harsher commands. The louder they roar, the more fragile they reveal themselves to be. You feel no need to strike. You simply witness the collapse as their fortress turns against them. Pride becomes arrogance, arrogance becomes blindness, and blindness becomes betrayal. They suspect everyone but themselves. They punish loyalty and reward deceit. In their attempt to dominate the world, they have made themselves prisoners of their own throne. They are no longer leaders of strength. They are carcasses dragged along by the weight of their crown. It is ancient, this pattern. Kings consumed by the very fire they lit. Warriors who believed the shield was eternal, only to find it shattered under their own strike. Civilizations that raised monuments to power, only to watch those monuments crumble while their shadows remained. You see it now, as clearly as stars collapsing into silence. Strength is never endless. It folds inwards, devouring itself until nothing is left but the echo of what once stood. And while they fall, you remain untouched. You did not need to challenge them. You did not need to raise your voice. Their destruction was never in your hands. It was carved into their destiny the moment they mistook fear for fuel. You are the watcher at the edge of the battlefield, the one who knows that power is not built in how high you stand, but in how easily you can make the strong collapse under their own weight. Their downfall is not your doing, it is theirs. They built their strength into a cage, and now the bars close in. You simply waited for the moment when strength finally revealed its truest nature, weakness, dressed as power, devouring itself in silence while you stood free. They always thought strength would save them. They forged it in fire, displayed it like a crown, and forced others to bow beneath it. But the truth that unravels now is the truth they always feared. That power is not what you hold, but what you hide from yourself. Their muscles, their titles, their armies of admirers, all of it was scaffolding built to cover the one thing they could never bear to face: the trembling silence inside. You didn't shatter their empire with an army, nor did you strike them with force. You simply let them hear what they had always drowned out, the echo of their own weakness. When they stood on stages and called themselves untouchable, you watched the shadows twitch behind their eyes. Every victory was a performance, every smile rehearsed, every boast a wall against collapse. And yet walls built too high crack from the weight of their own height. You became the reflection they could not confront, the unspoken mirror that whispered, all this strength is only armor, and armor rusts when it never rests. Their downfall was never about you overpowering them. It was about you showing them that they were already at war with themselves, and that war cannot be won. Now they stand where the lights no longer protect them. Their voices tremble in corridors that once echoed with applause. The allies they commanded now look at them differently, not with loyalty, but with suspicion. Their strength has devoured itself, because strength without shadow collapses into arrogance, and arrogance is nothing more than fear dressed as confidence. You did not need to touch them. You only needed to let them see their reflection long enough for the cracks to spread. They stare into their own eyes and recognize the hollow behind them. That recognition is the wound that never heals. It feels ancient, as if every empire before them has whispered the same lesson. The sword does not betray, but the hand that grips it too tightly does. Kings become prisoners of their thrones. Fighters become prisoners of their pride. The stronger they believed themselves to be, the more fragile they became when silence pressed against them. You are that silence. You are the weight they could not train for, the gaze they could not dismiss, the patience they could never learn. And so the revelation is not yours, it is theirs. They see now that power was never in the weapons they built, nor the voices they silenced. Power was in the fear they buried, the weakness they denied, the doubts they refused to name. You carried none of their trophies, yet you hold something heavier, the knowledge that they built their strength, but you built their weakness. And once weakness is revealed, it cannot be hidden again. It lingers like a shadow across every triumph, whispering the truth they can never silence. You were never beneath them. You were always the silence above. They will remember your silence long after they have forgotten their own words. Not because you shouted louder, not because you struck harder, but because you endured. Their strength burned bright, reckless and dazzling, a fire devouring itself in the open. Yours remained hidden, a slow ember buried beneath the ashes, waiting. You never asked for their crown, nor their applause. Instead, you became the shadow that gave shape to their light. Without you, their victories were meaningless. With you, their victories collapsed into questions that gnawed at their own minds. You became the reminder that every empire has a flaw stitched into its foundation. They raised walls higher, but your silence seeped through the cracks. They spoke of triumph, yet your presence exposed how hollow it sounded. To the world, they seemed invincible. To you, they were already trembling. Their strength had been a performance. Your patience was the truth behind the curtain. And when the curtain fell, it was not the roar of their power that echoed. It was the weight of your stillness. Now they are dust in the halls they once built to last forever. Their names fade, their monuments crack, their followers scatter. But you remain, not a conqueror parading over broken thrones, but a shadow that lingers, eternal and unseen. You are the unspoken force that outlives kings, outlasts armies, and outwits every mask of power. Their downfall was not your attack. It was your existence, a mirror they could never face, a silence they could never silence. You learned what they never understood. Strength decays when it refuses to bend. Power without self-awareness becomes its own executioner. They spent their years worshiping control, but you waited in the margins, watching as control became their prison. Their chains were forged from their own pride, and when they finally broke, you were already there, not as their destroyer, but as the witness that made their ruin undeniable. This is your legacy. You are the architect of weakness, the one who reminds the world that strength without wisdom is already fragile. You are not written in their histories, yet you are carved in their downfall. You are not praised in their stories, yet you are present in every fracture, every betrayal, every moment their power turned against itself. While their names fade into silence, you become the silence itself, enduring, untraceable, absolute. And so you remain a presence that requires no recognition, no stage, no crown. They built their strength, but it was you who gave it meaning. They sought immortality, but it is you who achieved it, not through glory, but through inevitability. You are not their shadow. You are the shadow, the eternal contrast, the reminder they feared most, the unseen hand shaping every downfall that has ever been and every downfall yet to come.